We believe and have always believed in this country that man was created in the image of God, that he was given talents and responsibilities and was instructed to use them to make this world a better place in which to live. And you see, this is the really great thing of America.
It's time to discover what binds us together, and finding it has the power to transform our world. That's what I believe. How about you?
Well, at this point in time, I want to go ahead and begin to invite up our panelists for our local panel. Would like for you to help me in welcoming Reverend Pastor Jerry Bishop, who was here from Life Quest. Come on up, Jerry Bishop. Also, we have Sister Evelyn Esparza Gonzalez from the Hispanic Center of Western Michigan. We have Ota Abande, who is here. He is an entrepreneur and also a founder of several businesses, as well as Kelsey Perdue, who is our 3rd Ward City Commissioner here in the city of Grand Rapids. Welcome, our panel. Come on up. So, no pressure, but everyone here expects all of you to have all the answers to everything that we've talked about today, coupled with a lot of the issues that we are facing here within our community. And I say that obviously with tongue in cheek, but I think that each of you represent in your own unique way. You have a lived experience in our beloved city. That really speaks to solutions, as well as many of you, or all of you, have just been committed to doing whatever it takes to make our city better. And so, on this afternoon, the goal is to hear from you, in particular, around issues and around things that I know that you're familiar with. But also, again, you bring a perspective that I think everyone here, all of us here, can benefit from. And so I'd like to begin, if I can, with Pastor Bishop and asking you the question of, from your perspective, wondering if you can speak briefly about the progress that we've made as a community. But also, we talk about progress. We still have challenges. We have significant challenges in Grand Rapids. And so would love for you to speak to the challenges that we continue to face.
Thank you, Reverend Jones. City Manager Mark Washington had a great presentation, and not to replay every moment of that, but we've made some historic accomplishments in hiring. We've had historic development in pockets of our city. In Proverbs 13 and 12, we're reminded that hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a longing fulfilled is a tree of life. I'm 41 years a resident in Grand Rapids, 40 in the 3rd Ward. It's hard to believe I started my adult life here 40 years ago, so I've had the opportunity to see the real needs, some significant development in my lifetime. I've seen tremendous growth, but I've also seen tremendous wait until tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And while there are pockets of enormous, beautiful real estate development, business growth, brewery business explosion, and we're ripe with gentrification. And while we've become a world-class city, we're a world-class city with 3rd world problems that typically we don't like to talk about in authenticity. I was sharing last night with a number of my ministry peers and conferring with them over text messages about some of the things I could highlight in terms of risk, and we know some of the very positive things. But one of the things we shared was, even panels like this is very risky to take part in, because if we were to have an elongated session of truth-telling, it's very dangerous from the funding standpoint that the very check writers that assist us to provide social services, when we begin to raise our hand and share about the inequities, the disparities, those checks disappear. So that's a significant risk. Our world-class city has a ward in it that I live in, and I'm thanking God that I have a world-class commission, the 3rd Ward. I've lived in this ward for 34 years. I pastor in this ward, I do business in this ward, and literally have invested in the ward. And subsequently, I've watched only, we'll say, 25% of the geography change positively in the past 40 years, but statistics say it's been 50 years. Literally over the last 40 years that I've been here, I've watched every type of approach be taken to bring attention to the real needs, begging for resources. Many focus groups, we submit valid strategies with mostly minimal change, simply to check the box that they met with us. And so when you talk about taking a risk, the risk that and this is not some esoteric approach, but the risk that I'm talking about is to the funders, the city, the county, the state. The risk is invest in life-changing outreach initiatives in the faith community, because the local church body, particularly in the urban core, when anything goes wrong, you literally push the community to us, but you don't send resources. Most of us are so undercapitalized, yet God sustains us, that imagine what kind of change we could facilitate and enable if people really partnered with us in spite of some of our differences. I was sharing with somebody that the risk to not convene a conference to talk about our brokenness and our divides only fosters more division and creates more microfractures. And to facilitate real healing, because I believe in our city, but there's a leak in this old building. And so each year that I can look out and strategically see areas that have been left to decay, it's hard to foster hope in the younger generation. And lastly, the neighborhood church has the most unique bond with the community like no other, but without much appreciation or much investment. We're not asking you to fund our Sunday morning activities, but no other entity in the county is called upon to feed, clothe, encourage, assist with employment. We are the greatest provider of social services need in the county, but the least appreciated in the office of the African American and Hispanic pastors. Although we're called to the stakeholder meetings, well, we're never really given a share of the growth and development, but we share much criticism. So my challenge in the invitation here is it's very risky being here. I thought the eloquence that was presented by Jeff last night about the Constitution was very good, but about 20 people of color agreed that if we said that, we'd be unfunded. My encouragement will be to take the risk to actually come and meet with us, listen to us, invest and capitalize in us so we can help capitalize the audience of 17 to 35-year-olds, specifically young men, that remain so undercapitalized that there's almost no statistical growth, with the exception of recidivism and unemployment. Invite us to something beyond the focus group. We have so many focus groups that we've been invited to that if there were per credit hours given, the vast majority of us would have earned 9 PhDs in community engagement. And while that there's some humor behind that,
yeah.
The euphemism, nothing changes if nothing changes. The ward I live in, while it has pockets of beauty, it also has pockets of battle wounds that people willingly, knowingly, and organizationally simply neglect until the property values are so low that it's ripe for the picking, and the very people that lived in neighborhoods can't afford to live there. There's very little programming that goes on. So what happens? Disenfranchisement. Take the risk to hear out our generational pain for the last 40 years. Then actually consider making an atonement for the strategic neglect of a pocket while the rest of our beautiful city is flourishing. When I moved here, the city downtown was just trash. Now we're in an area of beauty and splendor, but that's not to say that's the same narrative for the entire community. I love it here. It's been my home. I can't say I'm happy with everything. I believe in our city, but like I said, there's a leak in this old building.
Thank you, Pastor. I want to encourage everyone to utilize the QR code for questions. Again, for those of you who want to submit questions, as we complete this, we will have Q&A, and we'll just pull from the questions that are placed by way of the QR code. I'd next like to go to Evelyn Esparza Gonzalez, who again serves as president and CEO of the Hispanic Center of West Michigan. Evelyn, you lead an organization that has a legacy of being welcoming and inclusive. The Hispanic Center also has a reputation of being a place where one can find opportunity. When you consider who you're serving, what is needed, in your opinion, to open up and create more opportunities to live more abundantly here in Grand Rapids?
Well, could I just say that I would echo everything that he said, and we're done for the day. I think first, acknowledging all the good partnerships and collaborations that are happening in our community at this time. We've seen more, a better response from organizations to partnering and to expand programming and initiatives for the Latino community. So I am very grateful for that. I've seen joint different initiatives happening at city level and county level, and I'm very proud of that too. When it comes to the Latino community, I think what would be extremely helpful is to understand, the projected growth that we're having in this community, and the future economic contributions that will come with that. But equally as important is to think about what proactive steps we can start taking right now to make sure that we're creating initiatives and services that allow the community to exceed the expectations that we have. As I am thinking about examples of that is the changes that we are experiencing right now with the manufacturing industry. So everybody's aware that the Latino community, it's highly employed by this industry. And so with the changes in technology and the changes in automation, how do we make sure that we're preparing those individuals to step into different positions and again, to continue contributing to the economy to the local economy? I wanted to take us back to the basics, and I think some of those steps that I had in mind are already covered. So when I think about, my experience working at the Hispanic Center for the last 2 years, there are 4 different things that we have been able to implement and have worked really well for us. So as easy as understanding the community needs, making sure that we identify the right investments to create programming and services for our community, engaging with people, building through relationships with our community members, and then measuring impact. And I want to go back to understanding community needs, because when I talk about community needs, I'm talking about representation, right? The importance of having the Latino leaders, the Latino community part in decision-making and different initiatives that are created in the community. And when I say representation, doesn't mean Evelyn Esparza has to be at every single table in the city. I'm talking about the community members, because even I have make assumptions of what the community might think they need, and sometimes that's not true. And I wanted to share an example, that we went through actually last year. We were able to receive some funding to do a market assessment of our Latino community to identify access to capital barriers when it comes to homeownership and when it comes to small businesses. And so my assumption starting the project was earnings, the difference in earnings in the household is going to be the main barrier for people to become homeowners. And it was shocking to see that actually 62%, so let me back up. So we were able to engage with 2,000 households in the Latino community. And out of those 2,000 households, over 60% said we are making over $60,000. So earnings is not a problem to become homeowners. That was, again, something that I was not expecting. But we starting to go deeper in the data, and we started realizing that 47% of the individuals responding to the survey had never had a credit card in their life. 20% of those individuals didn't have a bank account. And so, and it could be for different reasons, right? Cultural pieces. A lot was said in different focus groups and surveys about the not having enough information about programs or services within their community. And so, or again, that understanding that we sometimes don't know how to engage necessarily with different communities. And so that for us was shocking, because when I was thinking that I had to design a program that would require millions of dollars to support community members to achieve homeownership at some point, it turns out that all I need to do is create a program that focuses on financial literacy. So I would invite you to really include community in part of the initiatives that are happening at the city, at the county level, to make sure that we're making and we're creating the right programs. When it comes to investment to programming, the same allocation of funding is vital for us to continue with our services in our community. Engagement without the relationships is just, it doesn't matter how many programs you designed, you will not get participation from our community. And so it's key that you partner with organizations that are already in our neighborhood and that are already connected with our different communities to make sure that the impact, it's really what we're hoping to. And measuring impact just allow us to, change whatever is needed to make sure that we are creating the right programs to respond in our community. That's my ask.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Appreciate that, Evelyn. I want to turn now to Ata. Ata, you have been an entrepreneur. You have helped to train entrepreneurs. And you even serviced entrepreneurs and small businesses while you were in the banking industry. So it's fair to say that you know a little something about entrepreneurship. And with that in mind, what do we need here in the 616 to make this a place where entrepreneurs of color can succeed and flourish?
That is such a loaded question.
Yeah.
And I mean, honestly, you could probably ask every business and they'll give you a different answer. But if I'm just thinking, on the micro level, creating an environment where the businesses can grow, right? So it feels like Grand Rapids is, we are very startup focused. So if you look at a lot of the initiatives and a lot of the programs that we have for small businesses, it is usually around the startup. And in talking with business owners, some of the business owners that have been able to break through, quote unquote, a glass ceiling of revenue, they see, I've heard that from them, right? It's like Grand Rapids is really, really focused on the startups. And I think part of the reason for that is it's the easiest group to be able to do some work for. It's easy to write a check for $1,000 for a grant for a business, or 10,000 or 20, or whatever the case may be. And because one thing we all know how to do is spend money, right? And it doesn't take time. I think we've heard from several of the speakers here the importance of relationship and the importance of access and the importance of capital. And all those things are missing in that middle ground where businesses can grow. And, when I was thinking about an analogy, I don't know how true or where any of my fact checkers out there, please feel free to reach out to me. But I remember learning of, an old Asian tradition where they didn't want the women to have big feet. And so they'd constrain their feet in these shoes, which limited how much the feet could grow. And it feels like that for a lot of our minority-owned businesses, where it's like, you can grow so much. And when we do help a lot of the startups, it is good. I'm not trying to say do not help startups. I mean, I did that for 8+ years. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm just saying that we also need a lot more work being done in that middle ground that gets businesses to be able to scale, because that is where the impact can really happen.
While we're on that, I want to follow up with another question. Again, we know of, or maybe we don't know, but there's a significant disparity that exists here in the 616. And out of the number that's been thrown around is out of the 11,000 businesses in Grand Rapids that bring in revenues of over $250,000 a year, fewer than 1% of them are Black and Brown owned.
Correct.
Just some thoughts, or your thoughts on some very tangible ways to change this current reality.
So I think that number in particular is one that I believe every single person in this room can affect. No matter where you are, what it is that you do, whether you can do it from a personal level or a corporate level. The one thing that every business needs to be able to sustain is customers. We all can support a small business. That's at the lowest level, right? It's like, where are we spending our dollars? And I want to challenge you on a personal level, on a corporate level, look at where you are spending your money and how much of that spend is going to minority-owned businesses. Because that is where a lot of the growth is going to happen. The other thing about it is I talked about the ease of being able to just write a check. The relationship of being able to identify an entrepreneur and be able to pour into them for them to be able to learn and understand how to strategize and grow and move the business forward takes time, it takes effort. But it's easy to write a check and not have to put that time and effort into it. We've heard from a lot of other organizations here about how the nonprofits are doing the groundwork and they have the proximity. And I'll never forget when I first started doing work with Spring GR around entrepreneurship. I sat down with Jerry Bishop and to tell him about this program they were trying to do to kind of help minority-owned businesses. And one of the things he said to me that really resonated with me was, Atav, this is just an initiative that's going to come and go. Don't bring it at all. This is long-suffering work, and it takes consistency and persistence to actually move the needle. And so it's not going to be something that you're just going to write a check and it's going to move forward. So there's something about proximity where there's learning, there's mentoring that is going to allow businesses to grow. And I would be remiss if I did not mention capital. Mm-hmm. Capital is absolutely essential to business growth, especially when you're looking and talking about scale. So how do we get access to capital for businesses as well? A few years ago, Goldman Sachs they did this study, which they called Black Womenomics. African American women is the fastest growing segment of entrepreneurs in the country. And they said, if we invest in 1 million Black women-owned businesses, just investing in 1 million Black women-owned businesses, we would increase jobs by 1.2 to 1.7 million new jobs. The national GDP would go up 1.4 to 2.1% to the tune of $300 to $450 billion. So there's an economic case for it as well. It's not just the right thing to do, right? But there's an economic case. And I can't remember who it was that said it. If we did invest in the talent that we have in the minority community, what are we missing out on? I think we need to redefine risk because everything is about risk, right? And we say, okay, well, if I do this, I'm going to lose money. Doug mentioned earlier that this work is going to cost us something. And there is a cost to it. There's going to be a cost to it. But if we are willing to do that, all the ships rise at the end of the day. So, and I think I'll stop there.
Thanks so much. You helped me with a lead-in around this idea of local talent, and I want to go next to Commissioner Kelsey Perdue. Kelsey, you were born and raised in Grand Rapids, 49507 to be exact. You attended and graduated from GRPS, and then you went to the Mecca, also known as Howard University in Washington, D.C. But Kelsey, you came back. Kelsey came back, y'all. She came back. And so I've always felt it to be a very intriguing question. What brought you back? And also, what's it going to take to attract and retain talent of color to Grand Rapids?
Thank you for the question, and thank you all for throwing this event. And I've really enjoyed the last 2 days and meeting folks that I've never had met before, and I don't know if I would without a convening like this. So thank you. It's been a fantastic practice in discourse and dialogue, and I think part of what we are embodying in this panel is that we want to celebrate our wins, but we want to be honest about our missed opportunities and where we fall short and how we move forward. But to answer your question, why did I come back? Well, I will tell you all a secret, and that was not my initial intention. Because I was a big city girl at that point, right? I lived in DC, I lived abroad. But what brought me back was first and foremost family. And as I was a young professional looking for opportunity. And I had this belief, this hope, this faith that I could make a change, a mark in the world. And when I moved back to Grand Rapids, initially temporarily, and I saw so much change happening across our region, across our city, but not so much in my neighborhood where I grew up, right, born and raised. I didn't see that shared prosperity there. And I really wanted to lean in and figure out why and then what we could do about it. And so that was really simply family and then opportunity. But growing up in the city, faced challenges. I grew up in the Baxter neighborhood. When I was a teenager, if you looked up the statistics around our neighborhoods in Grand Rapids, you will find that Baxter had the highest rates of crime, of gang activity, of drug activity. And so it was a place that came with a number of challenges. Before I was 10 years old, I saw 2 gunfights in person and had to run. And despite all of those challenges, it was a community that I loved. It was a community that took care of me, that took care of each other. And so it was this juxtaposition of kind of 2 different realities, challenges, but really blessings that I saw firsthand. And so despite that, or because of that, I did come to believe in our city, and that belief in our city was first modeled by my parents. And I want to take a quick moment to show you tell you a little bit about their story and how their actions show that their belief in our city, despite the challenges that they face as individuals. First, on one side, my mom's family. My mom is a first-generation Dutch American. Her parents immigrated to this country and to Michigan, landed in Michigan from the Netherlands. I grew up with cousins and my Oma and my Opa visiting our home on the southeast side and learning about their story of immigration and assimilation. And so that was one perspective. My mom grew up, she was one of 6. They were all sent through Christian schools in Jenison and did pretty well for themselves. And my mom went on to become a woman in the construction industry, so breaking glass ceilings there certainly. On the other side, and extremely relevant to today's conversation, my father is a direct descendant of slaves. And when I grew up, he told me he grew up on a farm. But come to find out, he grew up on a plantation. And he was raised by his grandfather, who was a sharecropper. And then my dad dropped out of school in 8th grade to become a sharecropper himself, where he picked cotton at the rate of 100 pounds of cotton for $1. This is not past history. This is my father, my biological father, who settled in Grand Rapids, who raised me, who showed me what's possible. He ended up going on to buy and manage a number of properties on the southeast side in the time of redlining, and also owned a community food store where he would read the dictionary at the front counter, and that's really where he learned to read and write. Amazing story, right? But he eventually left. He decided to leave the South to escape Jim Crow and to escape violence, physical violence, economic violence, and even spiritual violence. And so despite those very different pathways to our community, and both realities being very, I think, illustrative of what it means to be an American and what it means to truly believe in the American dream despite, that's what I saw. Those were the stories I heard. That's what raised me. So despite the challenges that I saw in the Third Ward and the Southeast Side, I still believed in our city then, and I certainly believe in our city now. And so as we think about attracting and retaining talent, we have to show them that this is a city that's worth believing in. And if you're thinking about young talent, we always have to show them that our city is cool too. Like we can't forget that. But how might we ensure that this city, no matter where you're situated, no matter where you're coming from, that you have a real and honest shot at economic security, that you have opportunities to be healthy and well, that you have opportunities to feel safe and connected in your community, that you have choice in all that, in those pathways that you choose, that you have growth pathways at your place of work, whether you are owning and operating your own business, or you choose to work for an established organization. So there are a lot of things that and of course the coolness, the arts and culture, the entertainment that can suit a lot of our different palettes. Those are how we make a community that can attract and retain talent, not just from Grand Rapids and Michigan, and regionally and nationally, but also internationally. And so everything that I just mentioned, we all have a piece in how we might do that, whether it's social services to get people on their feet, whether it's pathways to opportunity and living wage within the companies that we manage within or that we own and operate, or from a policy and governmental perspective, how do we make sure that we are doing our part in facilitating and creating amenity-rich communities with a strong park system, strong road system that feels safe, so on and so forth. So that's my quick blip of why I came back. And I certainly really quickly said, I need to stay here. I don't need to be a big city girl. I need to be a Midwestern Grand Rapidian for a long time, and have committed myself to doing that over the last 10 plus years that I've been back.
Thank you, Kelsey. While we're on, you mentioned policy. And again, you're in the policy space with your role in the commission. And prosperity is defined as the condition of being successful or thriving, i.e. economically or health-wise. Prosperity can mean living in a place with laws and policies that give everyone a fair chance to succeed. Can you briefly speak to concrete examples of policy or practices that can create greater prosperity for more people in Grand Rapids?
Yeah, before I do that, I always like to preface conversations about the now to remind us of the context. And we heard quite a bit of that today, right? And we cannot disconnect the history that we heard today and so much that has happened since then with our present day reality. There's a reason why we have the disparities that we see today, particularly along racial lines. This did not happen by happenstance. This is not a random occurrence. You all heard that violence, economic, physical, and other violence was legally sanctioned by our government. Not in all times, not in all ways, but that is a reality of how we got to where we are. And so as we think about what do we move forward, we cannot disconnect the two. That's really impossible, right? That explains why we're here where we are now. And so today, I want to share a few quick factoids that you may or may not be familiar with. I think yesterday we heard the 20% number of folks in our city who are living in poverty. A number that I like to also reference is the 52%, and that represents folks who are asset limited, income constrained, and employed, referred to as ALECs. But it means these are folks who are working, but between the cost of living and their wages that they are not able to make ends meet. So we have half the folks in our fair city who believe in our city, who choose to live, work, and play here, who don't have enough to save for a rainy day. Across the nation, Michigan is 15th in the country when it comes to income inequality. Not wealth, income. Our top 1% make 23, 26 times as much as our bottom 99% of earners in the state of Michigan. That's specifically in Grand Rapids. So Michigan is 15th in the nation when it comes to income inequality, and within our state, the greater Grand Rapids leads the state in that gap, right? We've heard the disparity around businesses. We've heard kind of the lack of sustainability and investment in social services. So I just really want to make the point that one, it's a full ecosystem of how do we get here and how do we get out, but two, really understanding that backdrop and the sobering reality of how difficult the situation we are in, and how exciting it is to know that we are a resource-rich community with lots of folks who are dedicated to working on these issues, and therefore we certainly can find a way forward. We certainly, without a doubt, I would not be doing this work if I truly did not believe that in my hearts of hearts. So there are, gosh, so many pathways you can take, but really quick, I'll name a few. City managers took a little bit of my thunder, naming a lot of the accomplishments we've had at City Hall the last few years around investing in place, investing in local businesses. One thing that I'm championing is taking advantage of the attention that we have as a city and making sure that we encourage tourism throughout the city and especially in the Third Ward. We have a lot to be proud of. We have a lot to celebrate. We have a lot of local businesses that would love to welcome you all and then folks who are coming to visit us. And so we're working on a bridge from downtown to the Third Ward, an arts and cultural tour that will evolve into an arts and cultural district to really help bring and attract folks as a way to support placemaking, economic development, our local business economy. And so I'm really excited about that because that will certainly pay dividends in many, many ways in terms of revenue for businesses, for the city that we can then invest right back in our community. So I know I'm looking at our time block, so I'll stop there. There's many more, but I do want to take this opportunity really quick in the spirit of today, in the spirit of dialogue, to just share with you all that I am always open for a conversation. And unfortunately, we've had a real drop in the presence of local media. And sometimes I think the way that, whether it's media, whether it's how things are portrayed, sound bites, that I don't know if we always get an honest and a deep understanding of where people are on the issues that we care most about. And so I want to invite you and open that door to say, if you ever are questioning where I am on something, whether it's as an elected, as we prepare for a vote, or as we think about how do we address the issues that we all care about, please give me a call. Please send me an email. I want to talk to you. One, so we can have shared understanding, but two, I want to listen more than I talk as an elected, and so I want to hear and learn from your expertise too. I'm a generalist. I can only go so deep on so many things at any given time, and so please help me better serve you in this city and keeping this open conversation and keeping the spirit of today going and saying let's have difficult conversations and let's find where we can move forward together.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you. I'm gonna turn now to some of the questions that are coming in by way of the QR code, and I'm gonna popcorn a bit. There's a question that came across. I want to ask Pastor Bishop, but the question is, what proactive steps can we take to strengthen and support families, fostering their resilience and their well-being?
You know, Doug made a great intro last night and again today, speaking about hope. And hope is really an acronym that I use all the time about helping other people excel. And when you begin to invest in initiatives to rebuild a broken mindset, we foster so much hope that it's contagious in the neighborhoods to the most broken audiences that are program unreachable. As an example, we had a spree where the most unreachable audience was the Kia Boys. They wreaked havoc in our community, stealing automobiles for 2 years, and they'll tell you, all I want to do is live. And when we invest in hope and encouragement, I think we open a window and we build bridges to every single opportunity that City Manager Washington alluded to. But if we keep ignoring the most needy population, then our gathering was a farce. We can't continue to omit the needs of the neediest audience and then declare that we're a world-class city.
Thank you for that. Appreciate that. Evelyn, I want to ask a question that came across. In your opinion, what does a revitalized Grand Rapids look like for communities of color? What does a revitalized Grand Rapids look like for communities of color?
I think I can be very optimistic at this point. And again, just mentioning again the different collaboration that is happening within our community, the different people that are getting involved in the work. I think that I would hate for our community to experience what we experienced through the pandemic. I've been in the nonprofit world for about 10 years, and I think pre-pandemic, we used to use the equity word and all of these fancy vocabulary to describe what disparities were in our community. And so the pandemic really made us feel those disparities firsthand, especially if you were leading an organization or working directly with communities that needed additional support. So I'm very optimistic that, that experience allowed us to get motivation. I've seen leaders saying enough is enough. We need to make changes. We need to be more vocal. We need to be present. We need to make sure that our communities are out there. And so I'm very optimistic that we're going to continue working really, really hard to make Grand Rapids a better place for our communities.
Thank you, Evelyn. Ata, do you believe our city has a shared vision, or do you believe that we have a forced vision where we have to be a part to have a seat at the table?
Wow.
Ooh. That one.
Trying to have me sent back home to Nigeria today. How would I answer that question? Grand Rapids has a concept we all know as West Michigan Nice. Mm-hmm. We talked about this at my table yesterday. And one of the things that West Michigan Nice does for us is you don't realize that someone that you're talking to about this shared vision is actually in opposition. And oftentimes you don't see that opposition until the pressure is starting to mount and the ticker for change is just about to go over the hill, and then that's when you see the opposition push back at you. And so I would say that there is this shared vision, yes, but I also think that I can't say how shared it is because of the culture of West Michiganites that we live in.
Thank you for that. Appreciate that. Commissioner Perdue, what is the one thing we can all do tomorrow to allow others to thrive and prosper in our community? Tomorrow.
Not
What do we
today,
do?
tomorrow.
Not today, tomorrow.
Okay. What's one thing we can all do tomorrow to help folks thrive and prosper? Gosh, I think, I love questions like this because I feel like they challenge us all to try to find a silver bullet. And unfortunately, there's no silver bullet in this work. But I do think, though, that there are a lot of small incremental steps that we can take to really make a difference, to really pay dividends in really real ways. I think the first thing that comes to mind is relationships. That's been a theme of the last 48 hours. We've all talked about it, whether you're in faith, community, nonprofit, economic development, and just how do we repair and restore its relationships. And so my challenge for you today and tomorrow is to maybe someone new that you met today that's not in your typical network, have coffee with them, talk to them. I've certainly, in some ways, have had to do that in my position, but it's actually, I have learned so much from folks. One of my sayings is, I don't have consistent friends, I don't have consistent enemies, I have consistent issues. And I don't care where a good idea comes from, I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna learn from it. I'm gonna use it to benefit my community. And so I encourage you all to kind of use some of that same approach and talking to someone that you don't know, maybe if you all share the same vision, but there is still fruit that can come from that connection and that relationship. And that is something that can be done tomorrow, and that can be seed that we don't know, what fruit it will bear 6 months from now, 6 years from now, 60 years from now. But it's important to plant today.
Thank you very much. Evelyn, is there enough partnership amongst existing nonprofits to leverage programs being offered versus creating new or solving problems individually? I think we can all agree that, Grand Rapids we have a substantial amount of nonprofit organizations. And I know whenever there's talk of a new nonprofit starting up, there are those who are in existing nonprofits who feel a certain kind of way. And I know that we turn to the nonprofit organizations quite often to handle a lot of the social issues that are at play in our beloved community. But again, from your perspective, is there enough partnership amongst existing nonprofits? Because I would say, again, based on my previous role as the head of the Urban League, that partnership wasn't always at the top of the list within the nonprofit sector. That's not what you think about when you think about nonprofits. But
yeah, no, I think that's a great question, and actually a question that a lot of leaders have conversations around. You have no idea how many people have asked me, why does the center does this when this organization does this?
Yeah.
Mental health, housing, basic needs, whatever you name it. And my response is always the same. Because when I refer people to those organizations, there's always a lack of either language or the cultural competency piece. People just don't feel comfortable in knocking directly to those doors. And so I think there is a lot of opportunity for partnership, but I think, there are some realities that we also have to face. And so when it comes to working with very diverse communities, we require the expertise of those individuals to lead the work within those communities. And so that might be something that a lot of people might not be in agreement, but that's how I feel about that whole thing.
Okay, very good.
And I think I saw something a week or two ago that said there's over 6,600 nonprofits in Kent County.
Does that sound about right?
Yes.
I don't think so, yeah. Sounds about right, yeah.
So I do wonder what it will look like if we had maybe 3,000, and what it might look like to coordinate and integrate our work, our budgets, our efforts, our talent. I'm of the belief that we could probably make a deeper impact if we learn to do a bit more collaboration, knowing that there are areas where you certainly need targeted effort. But I do think we're spreading ourselves a bit thin right now. And we have been at this work a long time. We know there's no silver bullet. And I believe we could probably move the needle a little bit faster if we're a little bit more strategic and integrated in our approach.
Thank you. I want to close with this. This is a quote that comes from Dr. King, and I think it also speaks to how many of us are feeling about what is, we live in a world-class city that is not perfect, and we heard throughout the course of the last 2 days that we're reminded that we live in a country that is not perfect. And in all of that, there is, I don't know about you, but there's a strong desire to want to see change like right now. And so as we come to a close with this panel, I'd like to go and ask each of you, Dr. King says we are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. In this unfolding conundrum of life and history, there is such a thing as being too late. This is no time for apathy or complacency. This is a time for vigorous and positive action. When you think about this fierce urgency of now, just if you could close again with a few words on what does that mean to you? Is there a specific issue in which you think we have to develop a fierce urgency of now, or call some sense of call to action or call to urgency right now? I'll begin with Reverend Bishop.
One area of fierce urgency as it relates to your commentary, I would simply say, love your neighbor as you love yourself. That's a fierce urgency, and it immediately impacts systemic disparities, implicit bias, because you are faced to front the reality. When we love our neighbor as we love ourselves, we immediately bring peace, harmony, love, and hope.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Pastor.
Things do feel very urgent. And lately I've been reflecting on the urgency. Well, someone said to me years ago that slow means fast. And I hated it. I'm like, no, slow is slow, fast is fast, let's go. We got work to do, right? And then, of course, over time, I realized the wisdom in that statement. And so while we do need to keep our foot on the gas pedal, and we need to do, and we cannot wait, right? I do think that there's true benefit and wisdom in finding those moments to slow down and to assess our work and to say, are we doing the right things at the right time in the right way? A number of us shared dinner last night, and we talked about the way technology is changing our world and just how much our world has changed and continues to change. And so we always need, I think, to stop and step back and reassess, are we doing the right things right now, or do we need to pivot our strategies? What worked in the 60s for that civil rights movement might not work today in our civil rights movement, right? And how do we adjust and adapt? So I think balancing that sense of urgency with a sense of slowing down to step back and be really clear on strategy, really clear on who are our allies, who can we get to the table to become allies on the issues. And then secondly, another reflection and takeaway from last night is we are all not always well-versed in practice in civic engagement and understanding how governments work, institutions work, policy making happens. And so I guess my other action and challenge to you would be to like rewatch the I Am a Bill video as a starting point. You remember that? No, to find ways to, help other folks or help yourself think about how to become more embedded and civically engaged in ways that are open and transparent and are related to building a broad coalition around the things that you care most about.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Evelyn.
Yes, there's definitely urgency right now. I'm a great believer of growth and learning from each other. So I think, again, collaboration, just to make sure that we combine resources, that multiple heads think better than one, right? So making sure that we're coming up with ideas, I would say that would be my call to action, collaboration.
Thank you. Ata.
So I'll speak from the business perspective, and I would say we have to shift from charity to investment. And to emphasize that, I want to share a story and a stat, and then I want to ask 3 questions. When we look at our small businesses and the way we support our small businesses, so I'll give you say for example, I'll use food. You own a business and you're doing a lunch meeting, and so you got to get it catered, right? So you're going to cater it, and you get Panera. Nothing wrong with Panera. Panera caters, something happens and they're late, like 30 minutes. Food comes, everybody eats, and you're like, man, they were late, it is what it is. Same scenario, you get food catered, it's a small business, minority-owned small business that caters, they're late 30 minutes. Meeting goes on and everything moves forward. The question is, what happens after that? High chance that you would use Panera again. Something happened. But with the small business, 9 times out of 10, it's like, man, we tried them, they were late, we're not gonna use them again, let's try somebody else. Doug talked about grace yesterday. We need to show grace to our small businesses and give them the opportunities to improve and be better. The second thing, when we pulled the statistic of the 250K and found that less than 1% of minority-owned businesses are bringing in 250K, we said, okay, let's look at how many of those businesses have a person of color in a C-suite position or on a board seat. And that number went from 70 to 300. So 300 out of 11,500 businesses have a person of color in a C-suite position or a board seat. So my challenge to you all, who are you supporting, small business-wise, that you're going to give them the opportunity to fail and use them again? Who is on your leadership team? And then who are you pouring into? I remember there was a meme that was going around, would you rather have dinner with Jay-Z or $10,000?
Yeah.
The idea is, who are you building relationship to? I would much rather have somebody say, Ata, come spend a day with me once a month to learn and understand what I'm doing than to write me a check for $1,000 a month. So who are you pouring into? Who's on your leadership team, and who are you supporting?
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, join me in thanking our panel on this afternoon.